Hey guys, it's the real Brad Bell. Thanks for clicking play on another edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. Just wanted to give you a quick disclaimer here and let you know that this was the first time that myself, Jerry Reed, and Andrew Stokes podcasted together in a while, and the first time we did it online, all three of us recording our separate audio. That audio has been edited, cleaned up, and should be good to go for another epic edition of the pod. But if there's a little off here and there, which there shouldn't be, but if there is, you know why. We were working out the kinks. Also, in the middle of this podcast, my beagles ran up on a possum in the backyard, so I had to go and edit that out as well. So if you see us kind of lose focus at the end, which I think it becomes more entertaining if you listen, it's because we were dealing with the mother of beagles, aka my wife Abby, seeking her beagles on a wild possum in the backyard, like one of Daenerys' dragons in Game of Thrones, toasting a goat on the mountainside in Westeros. So, thank you, we love you, and enjoy the show.
Before we get started, does anyone want to get out?
And here we go.
Live from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, welcome to episode 87 of the Confirmed Epic Podcast, the official podcast of the epicreview.com and proudly presented by the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. Get ready to pour yourself a Slusho and open the mystery box, cause tonight we are reviewing the Cloverfield Paradox, the third entry into the Cloverfield franchise. This was exclusive to Netflix, but more on that later. Joining me tonight and having a Slusho with me is not just a partner, but a friend, Jerry Reed, also known as
Barbecue 17. Good evening, everybody.
What's up, Jerry? I hope you're doing well this evening. I'm excited about talking a bunch of good checking out, a bunch of good epic news here, and we'll see what we have to say about this movie, right?
Absolutely. I did finally get to see Black Panther, though. Just got back from it about, 2 hours ago.
Okay, and I definitely want to get kind of just your quick thoughts on that. But before we get into what we've been checking out, I want to say that it is a plan for Andrew Stokes, one of our original three co-hosts and founders, to join us tonight for this edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. And he should be joining us for that Cloverfield Paradox review, the last third of the show. So he'll drop in later on. It'll be good to have aka Andrew Stokes back on the pod. But Jerry, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into what we've been checking out this week.
Check checklist? Check. Double check checking of checklist? Check.
So Jerry, I know you have some stuff you want to talk about that you've been checking out, some comic book related stuff, but you just saw Black Panther, as you just mentioned in the open.
I did.
So we reviewed that last week, but what was your thoughts about it?
I really enjoyed it. It definitely had a very different look than, most of the other Marvel movies in terms of the setting. Wakanda was really impressive, and I enjoyed the setting. Overall, I was pretty happy with it. One of the things I was telling my wife as we were walking out of the theater, or more as we were waiting for the two post-credit scenes, was I do think, with the exception of movies that had, a villain that was truly like a comic book villain, somebody like in costume, I really thought for the Marvel movies that for having human, more regular human villains, that both Claw and Eric Killmonger were two of the best Marvel villains from any of the films.
Killmonger was just, Michael B. Jordan was incredible in that role. He made that such a relatable, such an endearing villain. It's very sympathetic toward his cause, even if you didn't agree to the means to his end.
Easily, if you had flipped up the script, he could become the hero of the story. from a different perspective. And I think that makes for an intriguing villain.
So he's the best MCU villain behind Malekith the Cursed, right?
I think besides any of the... I just thought most memorable. I just said most... definitely there was enough there that they were very memorable. I feel that's been one of the problems with the Marvel movies, is that the main villains, unless you're talking about somebody like, Ultron or, Ronan, where it's very clear, like, okay, that's who the villain was. A lot of them are just, very regular human-looking guys. And I thought that this movie had both Killmonger and Claw, Andy Serkis as Claw, were easy to, remember, that they were very memorable, and it was very clear, like, what their goals were, and I enjoyed both of them.
And Andy Serkis really chewed the scenery, but he chewed it well.
Oh, absolutely.
I was joking about Malekith. Of course, he's like the worst MCU villain from Thor: The Dark World.
Just dull, sadly.
Yeah, he really was. But if you want to check out thoughts on Black Panther from the Confirmed Epic podcast, go check out episode 86 from last week. Abby and I, my wife, did a very, very in-depth, hour-long review on Ryan Coogler's Black Panther. All right, Jerry, besides finally seeing Black Panther like the rest of America, the rest of the world, what else have you been checking out this week, my friend?
The other thing I've been checking out is I just finished reading Marvel's Star Wars Mace Windu, Jedi of the Republic. So you and I talked about this for a second, but this is I think it's 5 issues. It was a 5-issue limited series that tells a story about Mace Windu during the Clone Wars as a general on a mission to sort of a very, very remote planet, pretty unsettled, but it has I think it's called like Hisric or something, or Hisrich, but pretty unsettled, but it has a strong, at this point, separatist presence. All these battle droids and this one battle droid mercenary are present. And so Mace Windu is sent in by the Jedi to go and, check things out and kind of see what's going on, why the separatists are interested in this planet. And he takes Kit Fisto along, so we get some more Kit Fisto scenes.
You can never have enough Kit Fisto.
Man, I love Kit Fisto. I love Kit Fisto. So it's really cool to see. It's always cool to see some of these characters. I mean, Mace Windu certainly is, I think if you're naming the top 10 characters in prominence in the prequel trilogy, Mace Windu is probably going to come up most of the time. I feel like he's, definitely, other than Obi-Wan and Anakin and Yoda, I mean, he's got to be the 4th most prominent Jedi in the, maybe Qui-Gon as well, 4th or 5th most prominent Jedi. But it's really interesting. It's a story where, Mace Windu takes a couple other Jedi with him, and there's a Jedi who is blind that he takes with him. But he talks about, the Jedi's name is Prosit Dibbs, but and as far as I know, I don't think he's ever been in anything else. I think this was an introduction to the character. But Mace Windu says, his lack of physical sight has gifted him great intuition, and he's as in tune with the Force as any Jedi I've known. So Mace Windu takes this guy with him, and during this mission, Mace Windu and Prosit have this disagreement over what the role of the Jedi is. And it kind of reminded me of a little bit some of the things that Luke Skywalker says in The Last Jedi about, some of the problems of the Jedi that they didn't see. And, Prosit Dibbs is seeing that, maybe it's not really the Jedi's role to be generals and to go out and, fight these battles for the Republic, and they're being too buddy-buddy. But he also starts accusing Mace Windu of having ulterior motives that it sounds like he doesn't have. But it was pretty good. Again, I really like, I have to say, I've read everything Marvel has put out in trade so far with Star Wars, which is quite a few books. They have been pretty prolific in the amount of Star Wars material, and I really have a hard time thinking...
That's an understatement, almost.
Yeah, I have a hard time thinking of any of them that I haven't really enjoyed. I think they have had some of the most high quality material, that has come out since things really shifted around with, Disney in 2012.
I think that the comics have outshined the books. Now, I haven't been a completist on everything like you have. I've read like 3 books. You've read all of them. I have read all of Vader, all of Star Wars. I read the first 3 issues of this Mace Windu. But I think the comics, would you agree with that they've been overall better than the books?
I think the comics have been very different than the books. The comics have told a lot of continuing adventures of characters. The books are more focused. The books are more focused in a lot of ways on a smaller, usually one character or a smaller grouping of characters. But also, I think the thing is, it's easier to get, Marvel's comics are usually telling a short story, something smaller, more contained, that I'm not sure you could sustain over a whole book.
The books are more dense. I don't know why I feel like that the new Star Wars books are more dense than a lot of the Legends books. Don't get me wrong. There was some dense stuff in Legends.
I don't know that I can agree with that. One of the things I think, though, is that, again, the Marvel books have been really, really good about blending together, characters or places or alien races and creatures that we've seen before, but putting them in different places. So if you're reading a prequel focused book, you're going to see characters from the original or you're going to see, races and stuff from the original trilogy, and the other way around. If you're reading the original trilogy book, you're going to see characters from the prequels or Rebel series. So I really liked it. I mean, Mace Windu is not the strongest of the Marvel series by any means, but I thought it was pretty good. Overall,
who wrote this, Jerry? Who wrote it? I cannot recall.
The writer of it is Owens. I'm trying to remember. I didn't have her on the front. Matt Owens is the writer. I will say, my biggest complaint was that a lot of the battle scenes are very unclear. Everything is very close up, and there's some battle scenes that get extremely messy where I absolutely was not sure what was going on. Dennis Cowan is the penciler, and then Edgar Salazar does some penciling in issue number 4. But that was about my only complaint. Overall, I really liked it. You even get a flashback. I don't know if you got to the point where there's the flashback of young Mace Windu.
Oh, I did not. It must have been in part 4 or 5.
It had to be part 4 and 5. But Mace Windu is thinking back about, his time as a Padawan, and his master is Sislin Mir. I'm not sure that I've ever. Again, I think I'm pretty confident she's a new character as well. But he's thinking about his relationship with his master as he is having this conversation with a guy who is not his Padawan, but a younger Jedi that he is trying to kind of instruct as well.
Jerry already committing these names to memory for his encyclopedic knowledge of Star Wars.
Sislin Mir is Mace Windu's apprentice.
That may
bastard.
be a trivia question next week for a prize on the Confirmed Epic podcast. So commit that to memory. I just found the action in it a little generic. I mean, Mace Windu was written clearly like Samuel L. Jackson and Mace.
You can hear him saying lines. Did you get to the point where he starts having the fight with Prosit Dibs? Where they start disagreeing with each other.
The blind guy?
Yeah.
And I don't think I got to
Once
that
you
part.
get to that point...
It's been a while.
Once you get to that point, the book takes on a whole different dimension. It is a fairly generic story early on.
Yeah.
Once you realize that there's like this whole plot going on, it takes on a very different dimension.
Yeah, and I found the villain. It was a droid, right? Wasn't it was it an IG droid that was the villain?
It's not an IG droid, but it's definitely he's a mercenary that General Grievous has hired to
lead the
clones.
Wasn't bad, from what I read, again, I can't judge it. I didn't complete the story. What would you rate it on the rating scale?
Probably a good and a half.
Good and a half, yeah. And everything's been solid for Marvel. Some of the stuff's been spectacular. Like Vader Down should have been its own movie. It was so good.
Vader Down was good. The regular Vader series was good. I've liked everything from the ongoing title.
The new Vader stuff by is Charles Soule, because Kieran Gillen wrote the first series, but the new one, which is after episode 3,
yes,
I mean, it's good, don't get me wrong, but I don't like it as much as I did the Kieran Gillen
I liked
stuff.
it better than Vader Down.
You like the newer stuff after episode 3?
Yeah, I enjoyed it better than the other Vader series. So
dang, that's
I really like the Poe Dameron book. The Poe Dameron book is very good. It's just kind of the
that's what I hear.
It's just the adventures of, again, it has kind of that very, I don't know, it's hard to say, but maybe like that original trilogy feel. They're just going on adventures, and Poe's just finishing different missions, and he's got a squad with him, and it also kind of reminds me of some of the the Rogue Squadron stuff from the early days of the expanded universe. Now Star Wars Legends.
Okay. So, keeping it with Disney, the House of Mouse, let's go from Star Wars to Marvel. Both the things I've been checking out are Marvel related. Let's start with the big one, Jerry. For my 31st birthday, my wife Abby surprised me with the latest Black Panther Marvel Legends figure. Not the Walmart exclusive, but the mainline series
from the Okai Build-A-Figure series.
Yeah, exactly. And I think she made a terrible, grave mistake by doing this, because Jerry had been telling me for like a couple months like how far Marvel Legends had really been coming with their new the new face technology, how they're, I guess you would say, kind of scanning. Face printing, right,
yeah.
Not face scan,
yeah,
face printing.
Face scanning is where they take a machine and actually scan, like, actors. It's never
like the old Jack specific.
Yeah,
like
and
said,
Mattel
WWF.
even uses a version of that technology, I believe, on their wrestling figures. Some of them are really good, some of them are very iffy. But the face printing you're talking about is very different, where they actually print the paintwork on the face so that it's not subjective. I mean, it is it's very clear, everything is exactly where it's supposed to be.
Yeah, and it looks really sharp. Now, it's not always perfect. Like some of the Cap from Infinity War leaves a lot to be desired. I don't think I'll be picking him up. But Abby kind of got me into this, and it wasn't until I really opened it up and got my hands on it and saw how well the articulation was. What'd you call it, Jerry? The butterfly hinges?
The butterfly joints or hinges that allow for some lateral movement at the biceps, as well as the regular, what you call a swivel hinge joint.
Are the butterfly hinges pretty standard on the latest Marvel Legends?
No, they're actually fairly far and few between. The first character I remember having them was Wolverine, the Juggernaut series Wolverine from a couple years ago. Is that 2016?
Okay.
Had it.
But man, Jerry, I go in and out of my collecting phases. The Mondo posters I've been pretty consistent with. I collected Hot Toys for a long time. I sold off the collection. I collected some sideshow statues, premium format. But I had some of the first couple waves of Black Series. Of Star Wars. I had like a few of the original Avengers Hasbro Marvel Legends. Yeah. But this new face printing technology, just seeing how well they capture the likenesses, has opened a whole new world to me, because I feel like I get an affordable collectible that also kind of has some gravitas to it. Like, it doesn't feel cheap. Yes, it's something a kid could pick up and play with, and that's perfectly fine. I mean, at the end of the day, isn't that what toys are for, to be played with? But it gives me a good representation of the characters that I love. Now, I'm sticking mainly to MCU, because the thing I admire in a figure is how well they can capture a likeness. And ever since this happened, Jerry, not only have I got the Black Panther wave pretty much complete as far as the cinematic characters, not trying to dive into the comic characters. I picked up a lot of the Thor Ragnarok series. I picked up a few of the Guardian series. I picked up the Target 2-pack Ego and Star-Lord. And I ordered me some stands from Amazon that are supposed to be pretty good for Marvel Legends and Star Wars Black. Those hadn't arrived.
I'd like to see them.
But yeah, definitely. I'll definitely let you take a look at them.
I use Kaiser stands for my Star Wars Black figures, which are the it's like a wire stand. They're actually made for very, very small dolls, but they work great for action figures. And I use a larger one for my Masters of the Universe Classics. So I'm curious to see what you picked up.
Now, I was close to getting into Mezco, but seeing how close Marvel Legends is... Now, it's not Mezco, okay? I get that. Two completely different figures, two completely different price points. You're talking one's $20 to $25, one's $80 to $85, somewhere in there, unless it's some kind of deluxe figure, of course, when you're talking about Mezco. And but just to see what I can get in comparison to Mezco, I was like, well, I can have 5 Marvel Legends. That's exaggerating. I can have 3 Marvel Legends roughly for the price of one Mezco, and I'm like, why not? These things pose well, they look well. We're getting a new IKEA case. We'll see how they look in there. But a topic I posed to Jerry, maybe a discussion we have one night on the pod, is Marvel Legends versus Mezco. Or Hasbro versus Mezco. Like, who's putting out the best product right now? Both very different, both phenomenal product, Jerry.
Yeah.
So, I'm excited. Aren't you excited for me?
I am. I'm just, we kept joking about, so how long is Brad going to keep these this time? So.
Who was that? You and Andrew?
Me and Kristen.
Oh, you and Kristen.
We were laughing.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to buy hella from you.
Yeah.
So, and I think that deal's going to go through. So I'm looking forward to that. I think if it's like you said, pace yourself. Now, I bought a lot because I had some birthday money.
Well, and you're kind of catching up a little bit too. So.
Yeah, that too. Once I kind of have it established, it's like, all right, I'm just collecting movie figures. I mean, it has to be quality too. Like, I'm not picking up Cap because it looks more like Bradley Cooper than Chris Evans. Like, I have my limits. The only thing that scares me, Jerry, about this line, and I posted it in the Marvel Legends Collecting Facebook page today, is like, you see these incredible figures with like the 2 sculpts like the Black Panther, right? And then I see like these Infinity War figures that are okay, but they are bare bones as far as the accessories, the multiple hands, the head sculpts. None of them have multiple head sculpts. So I don't know if they just figure people are going to buy this because it's Infinity War, or if it's a downward trajectory when it comes to Marvel Legends. Yeah. What do you think about that?
I mean, they've been going up for quite a while. I mean, the quality has just continued to increase and increase and increase. I mean, sometimes I get that, folks are kind of suspicious about, is the quality going to change? But, like, I'm looking at just a random wave, like Marvel Legends Spider-Man Homecoming series. You've got characters in there that have 3 head sculpts, some that have 2, and then some that
has 3 head sculpts.
One of the... Let me try to figure out what figure it is. Hold on a second.
No, it's okay. I didn't mean to hold you.
No. Cosmic Spider-Man?
Okay.
Cosmic Spider-Man has like 3 head sculpts on the fig, different that you can swap out. Whereas, I mean, Tombstone and Beetle are pretty bare bones figures. So you kind of get a mixture in each series. Like the new Spider-Man series, again, I mean, Gwenpool has like extra head sculpts and lots of accessories. Spider-Woman is pretty bare bones, So they kind of mix them throughout the series, and you're going to have some that are going to be extremely impressive and some that are going to be less so. I mean, the Netflix wave, Elektra's got...
the Netflix wave's impressive.
But like Elektra's got 2 head sculpts. Bullseye.
She's awesome.
Bullseye has multiple hands, multiple weapons, multiple heads, 2 head sculpts. Jessica Jones, just Jessica Jones. No alternate hands, no weapons.
She looks great.
She does look great, but they mix it up a little bit. So
yeah, and the thing is, anytime you get into a line like this, the key is to me, I have to limit myself as far as what I collect. Like, I can't get into collecting movie and comic-based figures. So I actually really Abby bought me the Black Panther, and I was going to keep that, right? But I put some thought into how do I want to approach this. I know I want to collect these. Do I want to collect the comic book-based figures? Do I want to collect the movie-based figures? And I decided to go with the movie-based figures, which tend to be, even though I love Marvel Comics, it used to be, as far as collecting, I tend to gravitate towards something that I can compare the sculpt to a real actor, a real person, right? I just enjoy that. I know that everybody doesn't enjoy that. The Mescos don't really try to do that when it comes to their comic book-based figures. So I'm really excited about it, Jerry. Have you been checking anything else out? I have one other thing.
I just finished reading Volume 2 of Batman and the Outsiders.
Yes, which is it's a Silver Age Batman and the Outsiders, right?
It's not Silver Age. Hold on one second. I'm just reaching up to grab it here.
Because you spoke about it on the podcast, I think, when you were reading Volume 1.
I did. It's not Silver Age. It's mid '80s. It's before Crisis.
Okay.
But
right,
I want something I was gonna tell you in here. There is an issue where they go to the 1984 Olympics and have to stop Maxie Zeus.
That's crazy. Hey, what year was Crisis? 85?
Crisis is at 85 to 86.
Okay, so that's considered the Bronze Age. 1970 to 1985, which is when Crisis would have taken place.
Yeah, that's going to be Bronze
Age. I just double-checked that.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
but it's pretty good. Again, I mean, I really, really like this Batman the Outsiders series. It's just kind of that thing when you have a really diverse team with a really diverse power set, you have some very interesting stories. And again, I mean, you have Batman in here, but I mean, you have Geoforce. You know, he's not quite doing a whole lot right now, right? In Rebirth, I don't know that I've seen Geoforce in anything yet.
I have not.
Yeah.
I haven't read everything.
Katana, you know, Black Lightning, which I know Black Lightning has a show right now, but I don't think Black Lightning's doing anything in Rebirth that I know of. Of course, again,
He's got a book now. I guess, to coincide with the show.
Okay, so it's not traded yet, because I'm always in the trades.
No, I think it's like 3 issues in.
Gotcha. You got Halo. You know, Halo is a huge focus in this series. I mean, she's a really mysterious character that in like the first issue they find her, they don't know who she is. She doesn't know who she is. You know, she has no memory, but she has this interesting power set where she can like change. She can use like energy to do different random things. Like she can fly. She can sort of project herself. She can do like these different powers that are based on colors. Like she can shoot like, you know, different kinds of energy blasts or a stasis beam, you know, tractor beams and stuff. But part of the mystery is they don't know who she is, and so Bruce Wayne has been trying to help, you know, find her identity. And in this volume, you know, they find out that she has like a family that's been looking for her, but she might have like a past as a criminal. So it's pretty fascinating. You got Rex Mason in here, you know, the Element Man. So.
And you talked in depth about kind of the premise of Batman and the Outsiders on episode 82 of the Confirmed Epic podcast. So if you're curious about that, go back and check out what we had been checking out in that episode of the pod. That was the Batman Forever episode. All right, Jerry, I've been checking out a Marvel graphic novel. I'm going to hold it up here if you're watching live on YouTube. This is the first Venom as far as Marvel Legacy is concerned, the recent Marvel Legacy reboot. It was the first Venom trade in that line.
This is the last reboot before the reboot that they're getting ready to do, right?
Yeah, this is when they went back to original numbering. So this one is like Venom 154 to 158. And that's only going to last for so long because they're starting a new Venom series coming out here soon. That's going to be starting with Venom number 1.
They got the movie coming out.
Yeah, I guess so. But, man, I really love this book. Venom can be hit or miss because you can get a decent book. You can get a piece of shit because he is one of those 90s characters like Cable. Like, I won't say Deadpool anymore. Deadpool, they've really polished him up. But like Lobo, we've talked about him on this podcast before, where it's just like sometimes there's not a lot of depth there. It takes a special writer to really crack into Eddie Brock. This is written by Mike Costa, but even better, the art is by Mark Bagley, who's a personal friend of Amos. And Mark Bagley gave Amos a page from this, like an insane
that's cool.
Venom page. Yeah. Mark Bagley is a nice guy. He comes to Heroes Con a lot, and he did, of course, Ultimate Spider-Man. He's the second longest running Spider-Man artist besides Steve Ditko, the third behind Steve Ditko and John Romita Sr., I believe. So he's in legendary company when it comes to Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse. So this is Venom, Lethal Protector, Blood in the Water. So you kind of got two subtitles there. And, man, here's the premise of this. All right. So there's these dinosaurs living in New York City. Dinosaurs living in the sewers of New York City, like the Ninja Turtles would.
I was going to make a joke, but you already went there.
I know, yeah. And they're almost like mutant dinosaurs. Now, I know this sounds cheesy. And if you were describing it to me, I'd be like, this sounds terrible. But they see Venom as kind of like their savior because he's kept an eye on them. Some of this stuff dates back to like really old Venom stuff, I think, from the 90s. And they mention that in some editor's notes and stuff. So it kind of clears that up for you. But they send in Craven the Hunter to actually check in and hunt down Venom. All right, so you get Craven, who is one of my favorite Spider-Man
I thought
villains,
that's who I was seeing on the back of the book when you kept holding it up.
All right, I'm back. The possum is still alive. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we had a possum scare with some of our beagles. Really scared the shit out of them. So anyway,
that's good. They were outside.
I wish we had Craven the Hunter to step in and hunt this possum. That's what I wish. So we were wrapping up what we've been checking out, but while we were doing that, Andrew Stokes, also known as
Andrew Stokes,
you joined us. So Andrew, thank you for joining us. I advertised that in the top of the show. But I'm just going to finish up talking about this Venom graphic novel for about one more hour. And then, no, I'm kidding. So anyway, Wilson Fisk, the mayor of New York, he hires Craven to come in, hunt Venom. They have an epic showdown in the sewers. And it's just really worth checking out. Even if you're just
David,
in the
epic
mood
showdown
for a
where?
Venom story, want to get hyped up for the movie, which will be nothing like this.
Cool. You did a good job.
In the sewer. Yeah, I said it correct. I didn't say sore like a bodily orifice. All right, so that's what I've been checking out. That's by Mike Costa, Mark Bagley, Venom, Lethal Protector, Blood in the Water. Andrew, since you're here for this segment, is there anything that you've been checking out that you want to talk about?
No, I can't really think of anything. I could probably come up with something if I knew I was going to be here this early for this. I checked out the first episode of Altered Carbon, but I don't really have anything to say on it, really. Yeah,
I don't like Altered Carbon.
No.
All right.
I prefer
that's
free
okay,
range organic carbon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Just kidding. I hadn't watched the show yet.
Good one.
All right. You'll still have plenty to say about the epic news of the week. So without further ado,
okay. Yeah, I just like
Jerry,
humming
that
it.
is the
humming
wrong
it, though.
sound effect.
Yeah, that's just our opening theme.
Yeah. All right. All right, Jerry. Let's go ahead, and Andrew. Let's go ahead and get into the epic news of the week. All right. So the big epic news of the week here is that Marvel Studios, aka Disney, has decided to move up the release date for Avengers Infinity War from May 4th to April 27th.
Yeah.
Now, this is a big deal because it gives them an extra week in theaters before they have to deal with Deadpool. It also gives them some cushion where they're not really kind of cannibalizing themselves at the box office when you talk about Solo, a Star Wars story. I know Andrew and I are people who really
You saying I
follow
don't?
the summer movie season. We keep up with box office. Not that Jerry doesn't.
I
He
do to
does
some extent for some movies.
I mean, do you really keep up with
You better
box
believe
office
it.
numbers that
Yeah.
much, Jerry?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I have
but
charts
throughout the summer.
and spreadsheets and graphs.
Okay, all right, but here's
Already. I'll be quizzing you.
We'll be quizzing you this summer then.
all right, Andrew. What do you think about them moving this up a week? Does this officially start summer movie season now in April? Is this what this
No, I
signifies?
told you this. We've had this conversation before. Summer movie season starts in May, regardless of what movies come out when. If it doesn't come out, if it comes out before May, then it's not coming out during the summer movie season. I mean, Black Panther was
I
a
think
big
the summer
film. Came out
started in February.
It's a crazy month for a film like that. You know what I mean?
I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the summer goes year round at this point. I mean, that's just they're always out. You know what I mean? Did you see that Rampage
Really?
also got pushed up I assume because of this?
What did it get pushed up to?
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah,
Smart move.
Yeah, so just 1 week ahead. It was coming out, I think, the week before the new Avengers.
Okay, it was coming out April
release
20th.
date,
Now
so
it's
like
coming
2
out
weeks ahead of Avengers right
13th.
now. So
So summer begins April 13th.
I
Maybe
guess
13th.
yeah, sounds about right. Summer already began in February, apparently.
But if they're moving it from May 4th, which is the premier summer date, that first Friday in May is like you're kicking it off. Does that not
They
change
really
things a
should
little
have
bit? Because
released
it's not like they're
Solo
releasing it initially
on May
in April.
4th.
They have
Come on.
moved it
Come on,
back
that
a
makes
week.
sense.
and then saved Avengers for Memorial Day weekend, maybe.
I guess. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess they're trying to space out their Marvel films or whatever. But I mean, I think we're kind of getting into this era where it doesn't matter in a general sense when you release a film if people want to go see it. Because Black Panther is still making money hand over foot here. You know what I mean?
Hand over claw, you mean?
Or
Ulysses S.
over
Claw.
foot? Okay.
But yeah, no, it is crazy. Marvel plays by their own rules.
they don't even play by their own
not
rules.
even
Disney
fair
plays
to
by
apply.
their rules. It feels like at this. They're gonna start setting the
Disney,
And then they tear those rules
Disney
up and
does
throw 'em
play
out the
by their own
window.
rules, but at the same time, it feels like even Star Wars seems to get. Look at all the flack The Last Jedi got. Has any Marvel movie ever really caught that much shit? Like MCU movie?
Not really.
I mean, some of them were lackluster.
Exactly.
But let's look at it a different way.
Been dumped on that much.
There are only 8 Star Wars episode installments. And they've been spread out over a long period of time. So each one, because of the 3 coming out in rapid succession and now 4. But I think the thing is, when a Star Wars movie comes out, it's easier to shake off a superhero movie because there's been so many of them and say, well, I didn't like that take as much. But with a Star Wars movie, it feels like it permanently alters. It does. It permanently alters the Star Wars universe.
Yeah.
Altered Carbonite?
And I think that with Star Wars, the earlier ones are so revered, whereas Marvel, even from the outset, people were like, "Well, I didn't like Captain America."
But it's clear, it doesn't change.
Much,
If you don't like this interpretation of Captain America or Black Panther or Ant-Man, it's not necessarily going to change the direction of the comics. It may or it may not. But with Star Wars, what comes out as a movie is absolutely going to affect the everything from the future. I mean, that's you're living with it. So
well, that is
yes.
the definitive like storytelling style of Star Wars is cinematically. Yes, there's books, yes, there's comics, sure, but the movies set the standard. Even with Marvel, I think while the movies are mainstream, at the end of the day, even when the movies lose their popularity, I think the comic books will still be there. So that was a great point, Jerry. But let's surf along in epic news to a Silver Surfer movie being confirmed by Fox, and it's going to be directed by Matthew Vaughn of Kick-Ass fame. And X-Men, of course, he directed X-Men First Class as well. And this is going to be a solo Silver Surfer movie, so it isn't him interacting with the Fan Four. Not saying other characters that Fox has the right to will not show up. Apparently, Fox is trying to fast track a bunch of stuff, and this is one of those things.
Kitty Pryde movie, right?
Yeah. Being written by Brian Michael Bendis.
Ooh.
I love the Silver Surfer. I absolutely love this character. I actually did not hate Rise of the Silver Surfer, the Fantastic Four sequel. I thought that I loved the Lawrence Fishburne voicing him in that movie. Now, that movie's obviously flawed tremendously. But can this work alone? Can the Silver Surfer work outside of the Fantastic Four cinematically? The even bigger question.
I think the Silver Surfer seems like an odd character to have their own solo film. I'm not sure how audiences will connect just with the Silver Surfer on his own, or how you would really do a story. I mean, you feel like you'd have to be part of an ensemble, or as more of a supporting character.
I think he makes more sense than like the Doctor Doom movie that was rumored, or the Black Cat Silver Sable. You know, I guess that's Sony, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess he used to have his own cartoon. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he might not be able to hold his own movie, but I mean, it still feels a little out of left field. Like they're just trying to hold on to properties at this point, or like Brad said, fast track some of the stuff for whatever reason. But yeah, I don't know.
Because the deal hasn't went through yet. Everybody thinks it's going to go through the Fox Marvel deal, but there's some, legal stuff with Comcast that I'm not going to get involved in talking about on this podcast. Yeah, we'll get a cease.
High school teacher hosts a secret podcast where he badmouths Comcast.
Yeah, exactly. It is an odd choice. I agree with Andrew. The Silver Surfer comics that have been solo, they've been written by Dan Slott over the past, I'd say, 4 to 5 years. They're very trippy. The art's by Mike Allred. And to me, if you're going to go for a individual standalone Silver Surfer movie, you would have to go for something like that, just something completely outside of the box. Even as Andrew said, completely outside of from left field, where you do not try to in any way connect it to the Fan Four, maybe even connect it to Galactus, like the story that they've been telling in the comics. And again, I'm not caught up on it, but he is freed from being the Herald of Galactus, like he's been, that's happened to him like a dozen times. And he explores the universe, and he befriends a family and interacts with them and shows them the universe. Just something trippy and balls to the wall. I could see that working, but do you really want to take that risk if you're Fox?
Can you imagine a future where we have the Silver Surfer in like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4?
Yes, I can.
You might have everything you want.
I would never say never with Disney and Marvel. Speaking of everything you want, how about a jar of honey? That's right. Today, Disney released the first Christopher Robin trailer. This movie's due out August 3rd, 2018. Stars Ewan McGregor, and it is calling it a live-action Winnie the Pooh adaptation may not be exactly right.
It's its own thing,
it almost seems like more like a callback to that.
No.
Oh, wait, I mean, is it supposed to be like is it a historical thing about Christopher Robin, or is it like in canon Winnie the Pooh or whatever?
No, it's in canon Winnie the Pooh. There was another movie called, I forget, it had Domhnall Gleeson, and it was called Waiting for Christopher Robin.
Yeah, that's why that's why I was confused. You're like, first trailer? I feel like I've already seen a trailer for this, but okay.
Yeah, so let's play a clip from that trailer right now.
We've called an emergency meeting this weekend.
I promised my wife and daughter I'd take them away this weekend, sir.
We need to cut 20%.
You promised these people good jobs.
And I thought you'd do anything for this company.
Well, have a good time.
What to do indeed. Pooh? Christopher Robin.
I've cracked.
Oh, I don't see any cracks. A few wrinkles, maybe.
And what a charming delight, guys.
That was a great sound clip.
Just, it reminds me of, sound clip to be inserted preceding this conversation. It reminds me of.
I really want to watch it. I really want to get my daughter to watch it.
Which I find, Abby and I watched it.
I know. She's
Jerry,
she
on
is
Netflix
funny
too.
about movies, though. Like,
she would love it.
It might be a
even
movie
got
that's
Harper
like,
a
it seems like she's
Paddington
gonna
Bear.
love it. She'll be like, nope, I don't want to watch that. So
she
I
takes
feel like
after
more
her
like
dad.
my wife is like that, but
She sounds like somebody.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
yeah, she's definitely kind of
Kristen is
Kristen
picky
logic.
As far
It's
as
kind of
she'll
weird
love
sometimes.
one thing and hate the other, especially when it comes to horror.
She doesn't listen to this podcast. It's okay.
Yeah, but do we really? Abby does. She just texts me lame-o when it comes to my Winnie the Pooh honey transitions.
That's awesome.
So, so thank you, honey, for watching the podcast. But I had to say, though, in all honesty, all right, all jokes aside, if you told me about this movie, my eyes would have got stuck in the back of my head. They would have been rolling so hard. But watching it really does seem like Disney's going to do it again. Like they're going to tug at your heartstrings. This is going to be like a look at life and regaining some type of part of your childhood, and Pooh's going to help him discover that. The Winnie the Pooh, they actually show him in this trailer that we played earlier. It looks, like I said, very similar to how they did Paddington Bear, and it sounds weird, but Paddington Bear never seemed off-putting. So I want to see this. I mean, I'll probably watch it when it comes out on Blu-ray, but hey, from the studio that brought you Beauty and the Beast, that's how the trailer starts, Andrew.
Yeah, I mean, if it's good enough, I saw Beauty and the Beast in theaters, and I plan on seeing like Lion King and that kind of stuff. I mean, I plan on seeing all these theaters, like if I can get away with it. So I mean, if it's looking good enough, I'll go to the theater. I mean, I haven't seen the trailer yet.
I think
so maybe I'm gonna watch
one of the guys in the movie watched tonight.
I like Winnie the Pooh.
Oh gosh, the guy from the IT crowd. The guy from the IT crowd who's in Cloverfield Paradox, O'Dowd. He's the voice of Tigger. He's the voice of Tigger in this movie, I believe.
Yeah, the funny guy from he's from Bridesmaids.
Who's
Really?
Josh Gad gonna do the voice of? Brad?
Oh dear.
Probably Eeyore.
Oh, okay, I'm there.
That would be my guess. All right, let's talk a little Oscars. I'm not gonna dive deep into it here, but we'll dive deep into The Shape of Water. Because Guillermo del Toro, one of Jerry's all-time favorite directors, and I think we all love Hellboy around here. We're all fans of del Toro. I practiced saying his name for like 7 years on this podcast, it feels like, and I finally got it right. But Shape of Water really cleaned up. Del Toro won Best Director. This movie got the best score at the Oscars, and of course the big one, it won Best Picture. Now, I have not seen Shape of Water. It comes out
It's like
on
the
home
same day as The
video,
Last Jedi.
next Tuesday, and
Right?
actually I would like to eventually...
Willikers. Yeah. What?
Really? Yeah, I think it is.
Poor
So what'd you
Last
say?
I think it is. I'm really looking...
I
he
said
said,
Poor Last Jedi.
I'm looking more
Yeah.
forward to the home release of Shape
I
of
really
Water
wanna
just
see it,
because
too.
I
I
haven't
just
seen it, and we'll probably
hadn't got a
watch it
chance to
on
get out and see it
demand,
yet.
definitely. But I can't believe we live in a world where Guillermo del Toro
Well,
won a
maybe
Best Picture before Christopher Nolan. Like, are you freaking kidding me?
Maybe
Not to say he doesn't deserve it, but
absolutely.
Are you guys planning on checking out Shape of Water? Yeah. Especially, I knew Jerry would. He's into the Universal Monsters. This is kind of an homage to Creature from the Black Lagoon. Del Toro said that. It just looks very kind of outside the box because it's an homage to that kind of Universal Monsters. And he was, Del Toro actually, I think he almost had the deal to oversee the reboot of the Universal Monsters.
He has been almost involved in a number of projects.
And then that fell through.
So, well, he was also involved in that. He did a lot of work for The Hobbit early on.
Anyone?
So much work to oversee The Hobbit. I think those would have been much more interesting movies if Guillermo del Toro had been involved. Gosh, there was another big series that he was apparently involved with too, and it was on the tip of my tongue a minute ago, and now it's fleeting. It's gone. I don't remember.
Is it really that hard to oversee a Hobbit, though?
Wow.
I mean,
you're gonna get another lame-o text from Abby again.
All right, before this, yeah, I'm gonna get another text from Abby here in a second.
People I think my audio cuts out every single time you tell a joke, but nope, it's just me being silent.
I just missed they used to have the little snare drum on here, and they don't anymore. God, I wish they still had that on here. But I thought it was awesome to see Del Toro win. It's a director that I like. I mean, he's a very outside the box. He's a very Jerry Barbecue 17 Reed director. I
do. I love his stuff.
I love his
if you remember his art books, I have a lot of the books he's written.
Pacific Rim.
Yeah.
Andrew, the director of Pacific Rim, won multiple Oscars. Think about that.
Did the writer win, though?
No. Actually, I think Del Toro might have.
I think it was his story idea.
Pacific Rim.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I could be wrong.
I do too.
What?
Yeah, I like Pacific Rim. Andrew does not.
No.
But here's the big one, guys. Roger Deakins finally won the Oscar for Best Visual Effects. He has been nominated dozens of times and never won an Oscar. This was a big win for movie nerds. He wins for Blade Runner 2049. A lot of people thought he was going to win for Prisoners a couple years ago. That movie was just shot gorgeously. And he deserves it. It was cool to see Roger Deakins win. If you go look at his filmography of the movies he shot,
Fargo.
I mean, you're talking
Shawshank Redemption.
Yeah. There's just so many that he shot.
Mountains of the Moon. That's a great movie.
Yeah. So Roger Deakins, congrats to him on his Oscar. So let's get into a little TMNT news, Jerry. Getting back to Rise of the TMNT, the new Nickelodeon show. We're not trying to sell anything here, Paramount and Viacom, okay? We're just trying to talk about the show. We're within our legal rights here. But today I read on Toy News Eye, Jerry, that John Cena is going to voice the main villain of this show. His name's Baron Draxum. Now, they showed a image of Baron Draxum. We don't know what his power set is. Besides taking over the world and the universe, we don't know what his goal is. But gosh, Jerry, can you believe John Cena is going to voice this?
That makes me a little more interested to watch this
show.
To be honest, so
I'm interested, I guess, just to see because looking at the image of this guy, I don't want to just hear John Cena's voice coming out of him because it's just gonna feel weird. You know what I mean? Like some characters, it's like, when
I look at him, John Cena is not the first person that comes to mind.
Right, exactly. So I'm interested to see if he's actually doing some sort of voice acting.
It's just,
you know what I mean? And
it's just random clips.
I'm just interested
I
to
hope
hear
he does
just random John Cena
wrestling
clips that they recorded
the
off of WWE matches.
You think his character?
They just have them in there.
Yes.
His character, we know this guy is dealing with the mystical arts. Do you think he's going to
You think he'll deal with ruthless aggression? He's a professor of
that'd be
thugonomics.
awesome. I would watch it just for that.
Yeah, he's just gonna go in rhyming all the time. I'm gonna check out.
You don't know what John Cena sounds like?
Hear his voice. I'm not really necessarily excited.
Oh,
for
as
show,
Baron Draxum?
Not
Yeah,
John Cena,
that'd be cool. Let's check it out.
Ninja Turtles villain. I don't. Yeah.
What a name! What a super villain name though. Baron
Sounds like
Draxum.
one of the guys
that
from
sounds
Micronauts.
like the villain on a new season
I'm
of
pretty
Power
sure
Rangers.
Micronauts had a villain
That's
that was
what it
Baron
sounds like.
something.
Yeah, why don't we STFU about that and go to one tidbit of Star Wars news here. So a lot of discussion came out this week. J.J. Abrams is finishing up the script for Actually, he submitted the treatment for Star Wars Episode 9. But Daisy Ridley's been doing a few interviews, and she said, JJ, him and Lawrence Kasdan really they crafted that script for The Force Awakens, but they also crafted a 3-movie arc for these main characters. And that Rian Johnson read JJ's script and absolutely just tossed it out. So here's the question. With all the polarization that Star Wars The Last Jedi has caused, and we mentioned that earlier in this podcast, what does JJ do heading into Episode 9? Does he try to, if at all possible, I know this is hard for us to really speculate about because we haven't seen his script, we'll never see his Episode 8, but so since he did 7, 8 was kind of thrown for a loop with Rian Johnson. Does he try to get this thing back on track to get where he wanted these characters to be, or does he just roll with the punches? Jerry, You're the Star Wars aficionado here, so
I was following this too.
First.
I saw when this came out, and this has been a big discussion. I think that J.J. Abrams really needs to get back and try to steer the movie in the direction that he was going in. And I say that because having really enjoyed The Force Awakens, having very mixed thoughts on The Last Jedi, I do feel that one of the primary problems with the sequel trilogy, and I do like it overall. I do like a lot of the characters and things that they're introducing, but I feel that one of the primary problems is there just doesn't seem to be any real direction. That
It's true. It's just how can
I don't feel that these movies are necessarily heading towards something, or that each movie is telling a complete story, if that makes sense. And again, if Episode 7 was the precursor, was kind of the let's get everybody where we want them, and then Episode 8 was the middle, and Episode 9 was the end, that would have been fine, but at this point I'm not sure I'm really seeing that yet. I was a little disturbed by the fact, again, we've talked before, it feels like everybody goes back and forth on this. Should a director have the ability in one of these franchise films to kind of do what they want to flex their own muscle, or should there be somebody or a group of people who are kind of controlling where this is going? And while I feel like Kathleen Kennedy is controlling, elements of this franchise, I don't know that I feel like the story is necessarily being directed by anybody. It just feels like it's happening. And I would like, again, if J.J. Abrams has an idea, at this point, would not be my number one choice to finish this trilogy out. But he started it, so I'd like to see it get finished. I would like to see Disney make sure that he gives this sequel trilogy an actual ending, at least. It doesn't have to end here overall, but at least this trilogy has to end.
But does it feel like an incomplete story now, Andrew, because you're taking the middle part of the Abrams story out? So he'll have the beginning and the end. He gets this thing back on track to where he wants to go. Does it give kind of unevenness to this trilogy, or does that even matter? What do you think, a.k.a. Andrew Stokes?
I think it matters because it is a complete trilogy. I don't know. It's one of those we'll have to kind of wait and see. It's definitely... I wouldn't originally have wanted him to do the entire trilogy. I was definitely one of those people that
What?
I mean, I was definitely one of those people after the first one. I'm like, all right, let's see. There was a cool setup. Let's see somebody else kind of take this in a more, another. I'm not crazy about the direction The Last Jedi went in, so
I would.
I mean, I don't. If anything, I imagine we'll at least get a fun.
I would be okay.
episode
Here's the
9.
thing.
So
I would be okay with them. I mean, I'm okay with them bringing J.J. Abrams back. But why is he writing the script? Why is Rian Johnson writing the script? Why isn't there somebody overseeing these projects who they're writing the scripts?
Yeah, directors should not be writing scripts. Certain directors can do treatments, do passovers on scripts, but Rian Johnson shouldn't have the right as the director. And the only major movie he's ever directed was Looper. All of his other stuff was really small, and Looper, compared to Star Wars, is small. He shouldn't have the ability to just, all right, I don't want to do this, so I'm going to do what I want to do with the most valuable film property on the face of the earth.
Like in the Marvel universe, I mean, I think we've seen directors who have written some scripts, and things have turned out well. But you can tell that there's still a direction being given. Somebody is still steering the fleet, overall and directing the fleet. There's still an admiral present.
Right.
And it doesn't feel like that's happening with the Star Wars movies at this point.
He wrote the whole script.
It definitely feels that way when you look at like what's going on with the Solo movie and stuff. You hear about all these side movies that are having a lot of behind the scenes, stuff going on where Disney's wanting to do one thing and the creators are wanting to do another thing. So there's obviously is some sort of level of control of this stuff. And Marvel's gone back and forth. You have, what happened with Ant-Man versus James Gunn, now kind of, doing his Guardians thing and getting to do it apparently his way and stuff. So,
yeah.
I mean, there are cooks in the kitchen, I believe, but yeah, it just the main Star Wars trilogy, I agree, it feels kind of directionless. So I really just don't see where it's going, and not in a good way. I can't wait to see what happens next.
Lucasfilm has all of these people who I think really are talented. Dave Filoni, Pablo Hidalgo are ones that pop to the top of my mind. I mean, some of the fantastic authors like Claudia Gray. I mean, they have some people who are writing and doing incredible work in the Star Wars universe. And these new movies, again, and I do like them, but these new movies just appear out of nowhere. I mean, if you were new to watching these films, they just seem like they come out of nowhere. They don't seem to address that, even that the original movies happened, in a sense. Well, story beats, but
they do.
You start off the movie
beats.
and it's just like, okay, it could be its own movie as well. I mean, without having the previous films, they don't do anything to set up like where some of these characters have come from, what's happened to them. They feel like they take place in a vacuum, and they don't. And I mean, you don't have to go.
Yeah,
I agree. I think that is absolutely something they need to do. Somebody needs to step up and do it.
But it's just going to. I mean, Rian Johnson was the only one that wrote the Last Jedi script, because I just looked this up. With The Force Awakens, Michael Arndt, who wrote Toy Story 3, was the original writer. You guys remember that?
Yeah, I was excited for that.
And then Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams came in and wrote the story.
Lawrence Kasdan has, again, the background, and I think would be someone that, could possibly do that at this point, too.
All right, so how come JJ has Kasdan with him to kind of balance him out on that first one, and then they're like, Rian Johnson, you do what you want to do? I mean, it seems like if you're going to give somebody that creative freedom, I mean, not that JJ was Spielberg as much as he wants to be, not that he was Spielberg heading into The Force Awakens, but I would say heading into The Force Awakens, he was a much more established filmmaker. than Ryan Johnson was heading into The Last Jedi. So, like, how do you
really
make
want to
that
have this
determination?
I really
That
want to
just
have this
makes zero
conversation
sense to
again
me.
in about
I
2
don't
weeks,
know.
because
That
I think we
seems
really need to
disorganized.
revisit The Last Jedi, because I really didn't talk with y'all about it as much as... Because, I mean, the Blu-ray's coming
The
out.
Last
I need
Jedi
to watch it
revisited?
again.
Sure,
I'm getting
why
ready to
not?
start reading the novel. It just came out today. It showed up in the mail. Just was released. Well, it came in the mail today. Today's the release date.
Just showed up, huh?
I'm just not super hyped for Star Wars in general. Like, I don't know what it is. I
shut
didn't really
your
care
mouth.
for Rogue One as much, nor The Last Jedi. Yeah, well, whatever. And, like, I'm just not hyped for this Solo movie right now. And I don't really care about Episode 9 all that much either. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I'm not as excited as I should be.
Yeah.
As much as I like Star Wars, I'm excited. I'm not to the point that you are.
Oh,
Andrew.
I'm pumped for Solo.
What about you, Jerry? Are you excited for Star Wars? I mean, I know you take in the content.
Solo Rogue One is my favorite
Okay.
thing that's come out of the Disney era in terms of for the movies. I've liked so much other stuff. I've liked so much of the stuff that's been going on.
Clone Wars is my favorite.
Rebels. Yeah, Rebels might be my favorite Star
Not
Wars
Clone
thing
Wars.
ever.
I'm
other
sorry,
than the
I
original
mean,
trilogy. So,
Rebels has been my
yeah, I gotta finish it up
I
too.
gotta finish the final 4 episodes. They're on my DVR, so I'm hoping nobody spoils those. Spoils
Everyone
those,
dies. I mean, obviously, I have
That's
no
the
idea.
best.
I don't even know the characters. I want to watch it sometime, so I'll have to get on that when Disney brings out their own streaming platform.
Okay, so Andrew Stokes showed up for this podcast. So did Opossum. It showed up for this podcast. And
Both of us are playing dead.
Yeah, just like the Cloverfield paradox showed up kind of out of nowhere and dropped on Super Bowl Sunday. So with that, let's get into our review of the Cloverfield paradox.
Possible earthquake near the Statue of Liberty.
Looks like you should have left town a little bit earlier.
Whatever you're doing, stop.
Before we dive deep into the Cloverfield paradox, let's go ahead and get into a few stats from this film. Nerd! This film was originally scheduled for a spring 2018 theatrical release date under the name God Particle. It was distributed by Paramount, produced by J.J. Abrams' production company, Bad Robot, directed by Julius Onah, who's a relatively unknown director. It was scored by Bear McCreary. Runtime.
Oh my gosh!
Runtime of
started with a $5 million budget.
Was $45 million. I'm guessing some of that budget went to those Super Bowl ads. I'm guessing.
I would assume
now.
That's not.
It may not be. I mean, that would be interesting to...
Yeah, typically, what ads and stuff aren't included. Marketing isn't included in a film budget, right? And especially, I mean, that would have been a Netflix. I'm sure Netflix paid for that spot. You know what I mean?
Not Paramount. Yeah. No, yeah, you're probably absolutely right. This was 17% on RT, so definitely wasn't received well by critics. It stars a lot of people here. It stars Daniel Bruhl, Chris O'Dowd. I can't say his name, but it's Martin Luther King in Selma. Jerry, how do you say his last name? David
Oyelowo.
Okay. All right. I'm not even going to try to pronounce that. Elizabeth Debicki
was
she is
the lady who they find trapped in the wall. No, she is not. But she's somebody who I recognized, and she was Aisha in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. I kept looking at her. I'm like, who is she? Who is she? She was the high priestess of the Sovereigns, the gold people in Guardians 2. I kept looking at her. I'm like, she is super familiar.
Okay.
The main character.
Yeah.
The only thing I remember her from was she was in a couple episodes of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I've never seen her in anything either. All right, so let's go ahead and get into some opening questions for this review. Andrew, you're a big Cloverfield fan. Just what are your thoughts on the franchise as a whole?
I like the idea of the franchise, that it's kind of trying to be this. It all takes place in the. Cloverfield's supposed to be more like a seal of approval type thing.
It's a type of special type of feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, it rhymes. I like this that they're not like sequels to one another. Is the general idea from the first two that I got, that it is just kind of interesting ideas that all kind of have a similar kind of feel to them to some degree, and I like that concept, and I think that continues here to a degree.
To a degree, yeah. What about you, Jerry? I know you haven't seen 10 Cloverfield Lane, right?
What?
Yeah, want to see it, just hadn't seen it yet. I really liked the first one. I really enjoyed the first movie. I was looking forward to it. I remember the trailer coming out in front of Transformers was the original teaser, and I remember a lot of people thought somebody said it's a lion.
I think that sounds right. Yeah,
and people thought it was a Voltron movie. I remember there's a lot of talk about, is this a Voltron movie? Because they didn't say much about it. It had it had the whole alternate reality game, that had nothing to do with the movie for the most part. I liked the first one. Just hadn't seen the second one yet. I went into this one with high hopes, but I kind of get the feeling with these movies that they're doing old, back in the days of video stores and home VHS, a lot of companies, if they would have a successful film, they would, like a horror movies especially, they would just start finding other cheap, low-budget horror movies, and they would use the name. Like the Trolls movies. There's Troll and Troll 2, and Troll 2 has nothing to do with Troll. Wizards of the Lost Kingdom and Wizards of the Lost Kingdom 2. I mean, they don't have anything really to do with each other except they have wizards. The House movies. The House movies were famous. After the first two, they just started, whatever movie was coming out, they would slap the label House on it. And I kind of feel like that's what they're doing with Cloverfield. They're just slapping the Cloverfield name because of recognition. And these are just general, science fiction / horror movies.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the first Cloverfield movie. Now, second one's the best movie, but just going back to that first film real quick, it felt like an event. You kind of went into the movie not knowing exactly what you were getting. Found footage, of course you had stuff like the Blair Witch in the past, but this is kind of like when found footage was almost in a way becoming mainstream with this and like the Paranormal Activity movies. So it did kind of really make a wave as far as film is concerned during that time period. Of course, it was directed by Matt Reeves, who would go on to do the final two Planet of the Apes movie and the Caesar trilogy, who I absolutely love. So it introduced us to him. I mean, it was just another, and this one J.J. Abrams had done Mission Impossible 3, and he was doing Lost, and he's done this now, producing it, not directing it. So it's like this guy, J.J. Abrams, who was a name, was on fire, and he was really starting to become mainstream. So, I mean, that first movie was special, even though it's not the best movie. So I'm a big fan of this franchise as well. I feel like the thing with J.J. Abrams, again, I know he hasn't directed any of the Cloverfield movies, but it just seems like stuff with Bad Robot involved is that mysteries are set up, they're not often answered. I think at least this film gives you some answer to a mystery from the first film. I'm not going to spoil that right here because we're in the non-spoiler section. We hadn't rolled the reel forward. But I did appreciate that about this film. So as far as like the cinematography, the sets, did this movie, it looked cinematic. I know that sounds dumb, maybe a bad way to put it, but if you're expecting some cheap, like direct-to-DVD film, that's not what this is, because that's not what this ever was intended to be. This was always meant to be a wide theatrical release, a big release for Paramount, and Netflix just happened to get in the game at the last minute, and I'm sure so many people subscribe to Netflix just to watch this because the Cloverfield franchise is a big deal. Do you think this film was shot well, Andrew Stokes?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to go back a little, to what you were kind of saying. I mean, Paramount, I guess, this film was moving around a lot, I feel like. You know what I mean? So I feel like that's kind of a sign of a studio not having the most confidence in a film. You know what I mean? So I think behind the scenes there was a little bit of worry about the film. And I mean, did Netflix subscriptions go up for this? Because
that's what I've heard. I've heard that they had now they don't. Netflix never releases numbers, viewing numbers. They just don't.
I mean, that's because that was the big question for me about this is what, is this going to be a gain? Because like for somebody like me, I'm like, cool, I'm going to go check out this movie. I'm excited for this. But I, was already a subscriber. They didn't gain anything from me. And they already have enough content right now, original content, to keep me. So I'm interested to see, Yeah. I mean, I guess we won't see because they are tight-lipped about their stuff. I'm just kind of interested about the behind-the-scenes kind of stuff and the arguments for and against and why this makes sense for them to pick up, why it does, and whether it's, in the long term worth their time. But yeah, I mean, it's a well-shot movie. I mean, if you didn't know any different, if you didn't know it had been released, straight to Netflix or whatever, I don't think you would have watched this, seen anything like, what's something off about this film? Like, it's a film. You know what I mean?
In comparison to Bright, which was always intended
my
for
understanding
Netflix,
about
this film
movie
to me looks 5 times better than Bright.
Paramount had a label called Insurge that they were trying to use. I think to release like what we would say middle of the road sci-fi movies, like certainly not indie low budget, but not your tentpole films either. That they were trying to do something, and what happened was that the Cloverfield name got attached to it as J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot gained interest, but also the budget kept going up. The budget started about $5 million for this movie, and eventually went up to $45 million. And from what I looked at, marketing is included in movie numbers from a couple sources that I found. But they eventually realized that with this being, again, not a tentpole film, it was going to be pretty tough to make a lot of money back on it if it was regular theatrical release. And so that's when they went with the Netflix idea. Apparently they could get a quicker return on this movie through Netflix.
Yeah, I mean, especially like we were talking earlier about the state of movies.
Right.
You have Marvel releasing big blockbusters in February. You know what I mean? So it's like, where do you got to find the right place to fit this in? And I think we saw last year that, there were a lot of movies that made a lot of money, but overall, movies weren't making as much money.
They don't, those lesser movies get overlooked.
It's a bad year for box office.
Right, they're just making less money. People are going to the Star Wars movie and the Marvel movie and stuff, and some of these other movies are falling by the wayside. Yeah, exactly.
And Netflix is all about being prolific. The more content they have, the more legitimacy they feel like they have as a brand. This is just based off stuff I read. Yeah. I'm not just throwing this out there.
They definitely feel more like and this isn't a dig at them, but they definitely feel like they're a quantity over quality. You know what I mean? Like they're just trying to rather than have like the biggest thing.
Again, I mean, you're sitting there and that's one of the things we, without giving too much away, we were like, this is talking about it like it's definitely, for being a film that just popped up on Netflix, it was a nice surprise.
And let's be honest, when I was watching the Super Bowl, I know Jerry wasn't, but when Andrew was watching it, I texted Andrew immediately. I mean, this was like a holy shit moment in Super Bowl marketing for me. I was like, what? Yeah. It's available after the game? Are you kidding?
Yeah, Kate and I were kind of sitting there and like freaking out, and my dad just just had disdain in his eyes, I think, when he looked at us. Just like, what are you guys? What's the big deal here? But I mean, that kind of plays into the Cloverfield side of things too, where, like we said, the first movie had this, be super vague, didn't show anything trailer. There's all this viral marketing, and then you have 10 Cloverfield Lane, where the first trailer hit a month before it was released or something. So Cloverfield as a franchise, is always trying to find a new way to build this, hype about the movie that almost has nothing to do with the movie itself.
And they're 3 for 3. You can argue whether they're 3 for 3 on good movies, but as far as hype surrounding a movie, they're 3 for 3. I think the hype kind of burned out on this quick.
Yeah.
Now, what about the premise of this film? So basically, there's an energy crisis on Earth. They're using a particle accelerator, something similar to what's used in The Flash on the CW, if you've ever watched that gives Barry his powers. But they're having to go into space to use the particle accelerator.
So we don't wind up with accidents like The Flash, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So the fear here is that there's going to be a hole ripped in the space-time. You're going to have all these things pulled from alternate realities, alternate universes that should never be here. This was set up by the great Donald Logue, who plays a writer who is writing a book cleverly named The Cloverfield Paradox.
Yeah.
In the first 5 minutes of the film. Donald Logue of Bullock fame from Gotham, and what sitcom on Fox, Andrew?
Grounded for Life.
With that one guy, you know that guy?
That one guy. Yeah.
There's this guy that's always with him. I don't know his damn name, but he's in Pineapple Express too. So Andrew and I were joking around about that. But I thought this was a very good setup for this film. And a very good way to get us to where we needed to be.
This author, if I'm not mistaken, also showed up in the viral marketing for the first movie, I believe.
No, but the last name was
Donald
the same.
Logue, though?
I think it may have been. It was not.
Oh, I thought the last week.
Oh, okay.
I looked up something earlier.
I have no idea. I don't know. But at least the character was supposed to have been involved in, to people who were, deep into the Cloverfield lore. He was like a known character already.
All right, so it was a good premise to launch a Cloverfield movie on. I agree with that. So, what about the cast? Kind of our thoughts on them, because I thought this was a decent cast, but it seemed like a very odd cast.
I liked the guy who kept saying "Mission Report,
here,
December
Jerry?
16th, 1991." No, as we were watching this movie, what my wife and I kept noticing is we basically looked at everybody and we're like, where do we know them from? I mean, I was the first one. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Baron Zemo from Civil War, Daniel Bruhl. And then my wife recognized Chris O'Dowd, and she's like, Jerry, that's Roy. That's Roy from the IT crowd. And we're like, oh yeah. And then I'm like, that lady looks familiar. And we realized, she was from Guardians of the Galaxy and Doctor Who. I thought it was an interesting cast. I mean, there wasn't a weak. It wasn't a weak cast by any means. Maybe
the Russian guy was kind of weak. The guy.
Well, okay. That's a good point. That I forgot him for a second. Although he does have he does have a couple good scenes near his end.
Yeah.
I thought one of the things is there's just not really a lot of time to develop chemistry between everybody, and I think that's one of the things. If you watch a movie that has a lot of characters that does a good job, you'll find that every character has some little idiosyncrasy or some little quirk or tick or something that helps you automatically remember that character. If you watch movies like The Thing has a pretty big cast. The original Alien, Aliens, those sci-fi movies where there's lots of characters and you're not getting a big backstory for everybody. Usually everybody has something that helps you remember them. I'm not sure that everybody in this film had that, and so you didn't really have a chance to, identify or at least feel like you recognized each character.
And the thing is about those movies, though, there was always an A-list actor to kind of propel those or elevate those B and C-list actors, right? In this movie, it's all B and C-list actors, and there's nobody to really bring out the best in each other. And I think that just results in kind of not a bad science fiction movie, I would say, but just kind of a generic science fiction movie. What do you think about that, Andrew? Am I wrong?
No, I kind of agree. I mean, at least as of right now, excuse me. Nobody is that huge of a named actor.
I mean, David Oyelowo would probably be the biggest in terms of
he'd be the biggest, and I feel like maybe
in
one
terms
day
of like
he will
acting
be.
clout, like what he's done, and
he was in that. But yeah, I mean, in some ways, it does absolutely feel like kind of a generic sci-fi movie, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
It kept making me think of other movies that I really liked. Like, I kept thinking of Event Horizon. No, that's not what I'm saying, Brad.
But you're like, I really don't like.
It kept reminding me of Event Horizon, Cube. You remember Cube?
I'm just joking.
Kept making me think of Cube. I don't know why. Maybe because the weird stuff happening. Sunshine. It kind of. But it kept making me think of other movies.
Way better.
I mean, again, it made me think of the plot of like a number of Doctor Who episodes. So, just without the Doctor.
Yeah, I mean that's what it felt like. It felt like a sci-fi episode. It almost felt like an episode of like Twilight Zone or something that was extended into a movie. Like this sci-fi concept, and they kind of ran with it.
You have like a good score. Like Bear McCreary's score is really good. The film's shot extremely well. Nothing looks cheap, right? The marketing was ingenious. But at the same time, it's like, I think it's heavy, a heavy weight on the scale to one side. And if you don't have the performances to go along with all that, the well-shot cinematography, the very powerful score, the marketing, I mean, what does that really mean? If you just have a generic story and a generic cast, I mean, it amounts to an okay movie, right? And I think that's kind of what my consensus on this is. Of course, we're going to get into spoilers here. One thing I want to talk about is this film getting too much hate? Because Andrew watched it before any of us. And Andrew was relatively positive on the film. He had been telling me that for weeks. And so I finally sit down and watch it. I'm like, this film is not as bad as everybody says it is. Am I right, Andrew?
I was very surprised. After, like we were talking, we see all these actors and actresses, and we're like, where do we know this from? So after the movie, I was sitting there looking up different people, and that led me to seeing the Rotten Tomatoes score, and I was very shocked. And I was like, well, maybe because I was watching this pretty soon after that Super Bowl trailer, not that night, but a couple days later, I believe. And I was like, well, maybe all the reviews are in, and the early ones are negative, and this will go up or whatever. But it's kind of stuck there, and I just don't get that level of it. I don't get the hate for it. I mean, it's not a genre changing film or anything. And I do think there are some good performances in this as well, especially near the end. I think there's some good stuff in here. It's definitely not what 15 or 17%.
What do you think, Andrew? I mean, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, again, I looked at it afterwards and I'm like, my gosh, 17%. But again, I think that is the effect of the Rotten Tomatoes model, and I think it's the big weakness that if you really get in and look at reviews, what do people say? It's a pretty average movie. It's a pretty average sci-fi movie. It's not terrible. I didn't turn it off. It's not going to show up on Mystery Science Theater 3000 anytime soon. But it's not a great movie either. It's a perfectly acceptable, middle of the road, kill some time sci-fi movie. The problem is,
and if it didn't have Cloverfield in the title,
right. The problem is that when it's a perfectly average movie and you give it an average score on Rotten Tomatoes, that means it drops down to a negative score. Because you're only looking at positive or negative.
Right. I mean,
and
we've talked about it before, and I'm a big proponent of checking out the average rating. Like they always have, like they have that percentage that they popularize. They have the average rating, and for this, the average rating for
which
this
is not as
is
bad. I mean, it's still
5 out of 10. Which definitely.
Now, when I looked at the Netflix,
right,
the user rating, it was a little higher. I mean? The average audience score on Rotten Tomatoes was like 47% and 3.1. Now, here's the thing. If you thought this movie was going to be a Cloverfield film, and you went into it, it has some good horror elements. I wish they would have ramped up the horror elements a lot more and made this a scarier movie. I think it would have been much stronger because the Cloverfield element is just feels like it's tacked on.
Yeah, I that's the thing. Watching this trailer or watching that Super Bowl commercial when it aired, it got me hyped. But I was definitely watching that. I'm like, I feel like they're playing up this Cloverfield aspect way more than it's going to be in the film, and people are going to go in expecting to see a sequel or
and can you blame people for feeling like that when you call the movie the Cloverfield Paradox?
Well, especially, it's not even that. It's like, if people are paying attention to Cloverfield Lane, okay, they're doing something with this Cloverfield film where they're not always attached. But that commercial, it's like, oh, they're showing scenes from the first one, and like, we wanted to know how this happened, or whatever they were saying. It's like, oh, they're really playing this up. And I'll admit that, the film actually wound up having more to do with the Cloverfield mythos as a whole than I expected it to. But I think based on that commercial, a lot of people would go in thinking, oh, this is like like I said, a sequel or prequel to that first.
The paradox is that if they call it a Cloverfield movie, right, and people expect it to be a Cloverfield movie and have something to do with those mythos, and they have a certain standard for it. If they don't call it a Cloverfield movie, then nobody will give a crap about it. So which one do you go with?
I mean, that's just what it is today. I mean, that's what branding is. You you have something new, you take something familiar and slap a label on it. You know what I mean? It's not just a movie thing. You know what I mean? They have a new flavor of soda. They make it Mountain Dew something or other.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Even though it's just a new soda. So, but I mean, again, I like the idea. It kind of reminds me of like what they were trying to do with the original Halloween. His original idea was it's like an anthology movie, but each movie is its own story instead of a bunch of stories within one. Which,
Michael Myers went and screwed that up.
I don't know. I like the idea. Yeah, I like the idea of Cloverfield being a seal of approval. That seal of approval is a little less shiny after this one, but I'm still. I mean, the next one is this rumored World War II one, and I assume it's not going to really have anything to do with these first three, and I'm perfectly fine with that. I'm excited because the concepts of these movies, I'm definitely there for, and I haven't been like,
So
I've enjoyed
that,
all
there's
of
a couple little things I want to dive into before we wrap up this edition of the pod. So let's roll the reel forward to spoilers for 10 Cloverfield Lane. No, that would not be this podcast. We're going to roll the reel forward to spoilers for the Cloverfield Paradox, starting now. Andrew, did you think this was kind of a convoluted way to basically set up the Cloverfield monster? Was this film even really necessary?
I don't think those portions of the film were necessarily necessary. The first one, or the 10 Cloverfield Lane, I don't want to get too much into spoilers because Jerry hasn't seen it, but the parts of that ending, definitely I felt like...
Oh, yeah.
I feel like they added this. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like this wasn't necessarily exactly what the original script was had, and this is where they've kind of added things in to give it this Cloverfield feel. This one, they're definitely, it seemed a little more shoehorned in to be specific to the first Cloverfield instead of just giving it a Cloverfield feel. So I definitely wasn't the big. I mean, there were some cool parts. The parts that felt added on, especially like a lot of the stuff on Earth. Some of those scenes were cool. They weren't necessarily. They didn't necessarily help.
Yeah, I can agree with that. The Donald Logue explanation at the start of the film felt like it was there just to set up the final shot.
Yeah.
Like, that was all, like, if we would have just got that at the beginning and then the final shot of the monster from the first Cloverfield movie, it'd be like, okay, you take those two things out, this really doesn't tie into it at all. But I agree with Andrew. It ties in a little bit more than 10 Cloverfield Lane does. So
it made me think about, I don't know, like seeing those scenes at the beginning and the scene at the end made me think of, like, you know, how the original Godzilla, the American version, added in, you know, the shots of American actors into the movie, or like the Chinese Iron Man 3.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that adds, like, the whole story with some Chinese surgeons in it or something. I mean, it felt very, those elements felt very tacked on. I liked what was there. I liked the movie that was there. I wish it had gone further with the horror elements and sort of the problems that occurred because of the paradox. And I feel like if they wouldn't have focused on making those beginning and ending parts, and let things stretch out a bit more in the middle with, like, the weird stuff that was going on, it would have been a stronger movie.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like even with those parts off, there was still a little bit of a mismatch of is this a character movie or is this like a weird action, you know, where all this weird stuff's happening? And it felt like they were trying to go for both those things. So, you know, I wish, like you said, they kind of picked one direction and kind of stuck to it, because there were some interesting concepts with the character stuff going on. The kind of main story of this woman who lost her family, now she's in this alternate reality and her family's alive, and now she wants to, like, stay in this reality, even though that doesn't really make sense. But, you know, it's you know,
right, and she tells the guy, you couldn't possibly know, or right? You know, so you couldn't begin to understand this.
Right. Yeah, like, it's like, that's some interesting concepts, and I wish maybe it had been more of just about that, or more of like
the guy getting
really weird alternate reality stuff going on,
getting sucked into the
like,
wall and losing his arm, and his arm showing up later on by itself and writing things down.
Yeah. And being sentient. Like, I wanted to see, like,
crazy
more
stuff.
Of what's
like,
going on with
how
this,
did the worms, end up inside the guy, the Russian guy, and cause him to go crazy to where he was, like, making a gun on a 3D printer, threatening to kill people, worms popping out of his body. How did the gyrosphere? Like, there was a lot of weird stuff going on. I would have liked to have more of that, or more of what you said, with focusing on, excuse me, I'm sorry, yawned. How somebody responded. It's getting late here.
It's late on the East Coast. Jerry and I have been up since 5 a.m., so...
Yeah.
I just want to say that I agree with Andrew wholeheartedly, though, on this film, and that is, if it would have embraced being either this crazy body horror, alternate reality type film, it could have been a much better movie. But on the other end of the spectrum, if it would have fully embraced being something dealing with the emotions of people going on in this situation, then I think it would have been a better movie. But it tries to play it at both those things, and it just kind of feels like more of an uneven movie to me. But let's go ahead and give a rating to this. If you have any final thoughts on the Cloverfield paradox, feel free to throw that out there too. Let's start with you, Andrew. What are your final thoughts on rating?
I'd probably give it an 8.5. It's not a bad movie to watch, on an evening, or, when you don't have anything much to do, but, it's pretty forgettable for the most part, I thought.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd agree with that. I'm gonna go with the 8.5. It doesn't feel like it knows what it wants to be. It feels uneven. It feels like the Cloverfield elements were just forced into it, Whereas 10 Cloverfield Lane made you think and ponder about how it could have been connected to the original, this just, force feeds it through the Donald Logue exposition as the writer, and then that final shot, which is cool at the end, but I don't know if it ultimately does the film or the franchise of Cloverfield any favors overall. Again, it's not crap, it's not 17% on RT bad, but it's just an 8.5 for me as well. Alright, Andrew, moment of truth. What do you rate the Cloverfield Paradox?
I think we're going to be all across the board here. I also would say 8.5. It's enjoyable. It may be if somebody, if one of my friends hadn't seen it yet, and I was around and like, oh, I'm gonna check out this film. I'm like, okay, cool, I'll sit down and watch it again. But it definitely 10 Cloverfield Lane, I just felt like was such a tighter film that really kind of knew what it was going to be, even with some of the maybe added on parts.
Overlord is what it's called now.
World War II movie.
Overlord is the name of the working title or something.
Right. Yeah. I'm hoping that's a little bit more like 10 Cloverfield.
All right,
even
so
more
I think
like the
that's
original
just about going to wrap it up for the
Cloverfield.
87th edition of the Confirmed Epic Podcast. On episode 88 of the podcast next week, we're going to revisit the original Avengers movie, and in honor, of course, of the upcoming Avengers Infinity War. We're not doing a whole rewatch, but I wanted to revisit Avengers and then eventually Avengers Age of Ultron, because we never reviewed those two films on this podcast. And then I think, per Jerry's request, to give us all a couple weeks to revisit The Last Jedi, at least Jerry and I will do a kind of Blu-ray revisited review of Last Jedi in episode 89. But Jerry, my advice on that podcast is that's all we talk about.
Probably
really
so, because we'll be here all night.
Into that. Of course, Andrew, Kate, and I reviewed that on an earlier edition of the Confirmed Epic podcast back in December when that movie came out. Andrew Stokes, where can people find more of you? What about you, Jerry Reed?
You can follow me on Twitter at aka Andrew Stokes.
Keep checking me out at actionfigurebarbecue.com. That's BARBECUE.com, and I'm also on Facebook, Action Figure
as
Barbecue.
Always on Twitter at The Real Brad Bell, DREEL Brad Bell, on Instagram at The Confirmed Epic Podcast, at thepicreview.com. Of course, you can find me at Geeks Worldwide and this podcast on the Geeks Worldwide Radio Network. Don't forget to pick up our shirts and hoodies at tpublic.com/user/TheRealBradBell. And once again, from the Hollywood foothills of North Carolina, we are out.
That's all I have to say about that.
This has been a production of the GWW Radio Network. Please don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, check out Geeks Worldwide at thegww.com for all the latest news, reviews, and opinions on video games, comics, movies, TV, cosplay, and more. Geeks, assemble!